Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely, Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, it's a battle of the Blue Bloods. It's USC versus Penn State in the Coliseum, and we're breaking it all down today.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for this USC football team. And I know last week was rough and very frustrating, but you've got to put that behind you. You know, you watch the tape, you make the corrections that need to be made, you learn from it, and then you move on. And I really do feel good about this week. There's just something about these big-time games where you have that sense of optimism. There's just a different energy in the air throughout the week, and I truly feel that. And I really believe that Coach Riley and this coaching staff will have the team ready to go. I will say this, though. I do want to see an angry football team this week. I want to see a team that takes a lot of pride in wearing the Cardinal and gold, that goes out there and plays angry, that plays within the rules and plays smart, but goes out there with a lot of passion and frustration. The Coliseum needs to be rocking this week. It needs to be loud. It needs to stay loud for the entire game. We really need to have that Big Ten home field advantage and have a hostile environment on Saturday. It's time to get back in the win column and show that we can compete with one of the best teams in the conference. 1-0 this week, that's the only thing that matters.
Look, all I'm going to say, if someone knows and has the experience of a top-ranked team coming into the Coliseum and pulling off an upset with a crazy USC crowd, it's this man over here.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why there really was a sense, and what Keely's alluding to is the Stanford game my sophomore year. They were fourth in the country. We were struggling a little bit that year, and then they come to the Coliseum. It was college game day, all of that, and it was a night game, so a little different, but that's why I said I really feel good about this game. You know, you may say there's some things we need to work on, which we do, and they do have some advantages in this football game. Penn State does against our team that's been struggling in some areas, but overall, when it's at home, when it's in the Coliseum with your home field advantage, with the crowd, there's just a sense of optimism, right? And I really feel good about this week. I struggle not comparing it to that game, so I'm glad you said that. And
okay.
You know, I've been locked in this week. This is the Kessler Bowl.
It is.
My wife went to Penn State. You know, we have a little light up calendar thing, or a video calendar. I say, if you need anything from this week, put it on the calendar.
Okay.
I'll check it out. Other than that, we're not talking until Saturday. No, I'm just
kidding.
The
lines are drawn.
But it is the Kessler Bowl. We've been having some, you know, we're going to have bragging rights for a whole year.
Yeah,
but,
no, this is important.
I'm very excited. That's a good point. It really is one of those games when you play a little bit better, I feel like, too, when you have those big competitions.
Yeah.
You get a little bit more up for those games, and we have a great opportunity this Saturday against Penn State.
Now, I do want to address the elephant in the room. I know we look we're like a high school AV club. I do apologize. This is a one-time thing. There is maintenance going on in our studio this week. So we are here in Basher Lounge. If you've ever been to Heritage Hall, that's where we are. So this is, again, a temporary setup. Not ideal for Penn State week, obviously, but we're making it work, Cody.
Hey, you know what? We're bringing people to the show. There was some, you know, frustration or confusion of, are we going to be able to do it this week? Or are we going to have to do an at-home podcast, you know, over Skype, which is not as good of quality as in person. But, hey, they got it done. Emily Crash, Keely, they came in here early and got it all set up. So if anyone has any problems with the setup, come see me, because, you know, we took a lot of pride in setting this up, and I'm proud of what we got to do, and we're still getting the product out for you guys and being able to preview this episode.
Yeah, excited to do it. Before we jump in, just a couple reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are VictoryPodUSC. And if you're an audio listener, you can look at your description. It says send us a text. You can contact us that way as well. Alrighty, Cody, that's all I have for reminders. I know you like to start with the head coach, so take it away.
Yeah, their head coach is James Franklin. This is his 11th season at Penn State, a ton of experience. He's been coaching for 30 years, and he's been a head coach for 14 of those years, and there's a lot of experience throughout this entire staff. He has a career record of 117 wins and 54 losses. He is 93-39 at Penn State. This year, he has the Nittany Lions off to a 5-0 start. He has had a ton of success in his time at Penn State, and he knows how to win. In his first 2 years, though, at Penn State, they went 6-6, and then they went 7-5. But since then, the Nittany Lions under Franklin have finished in the top 12 of the final college football playoff rankings in 6 of the last 8 seasons. They've been to 5 New Year's Six Bowls. They've won 3 of those. Franklin also led the team to a Big Ten championship in 2016, so he knows how to win. He knows how to win consistently. Now moving over to the offensive side of the football, their offensive coordinator is Andy Kotelnicki. First season with Penn State as their offensive coordinator. He's been coaching since 2004, so he has, again, a ton of experience on this staff as an offensive coordinator. In fact, he was actually an offensive assistant from 2004 to 2005 at Western Illinois. And then since then, he's been only an offensive coordinator. So he went from an offensive assistant and then jumped to OC and has been nothing but that for the last 18 years. So a ton of experience calling plays. His accomplishments and stats as an OC are as good as anyone in the entire country, as good as anyone I've ever previewed or seen. And before coming to Penn State, he was offensive coordinator for Buffalo from 2015 to 2020, where he set multiple school records. Now, I'm going to give you a lot of stats here, and this may be a little bit longer than I do on some of the coaches, but I think it sets up the stage for this football game and why he's so good on offense and why Penn State went out and got him. So in 2020, Buffalo averaged 478 yards per game on offense with 287 yards per game rushing, which was second in the entire country. Now, you may think they were very conservative and controlled the clock with those numbers on the ground, but that's not the case at all. They also averaged 43 points per game that year, which was fifth in college football, and they had 32 rushing touchdowns. And that may not seem like a ton, but that was the COVID year, so they only played 7 games. So 32 rushing touchdowns in 7 games is unbelievable. Their All-American running back, Jarrett Patterson, led the nation in rushing with 178 yards per game, including 409 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns in 1 game. Let that sink in. He had 400 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. That's someone's entire season stats, or that's half the season stats for some of these dominant running backs. He had that in 1 game. So Kolinicki knows how to get the ground game going. He knows how to use his big-time players to his advantage. The year before, in 2019, Patterson had 1,800 yards rushing and 19 touchdowns, but it wasn't just the run game that he got going at Buffalo. Their quarterback, Tyree Jackson, was also the MAC Offensive Player of the Year in 2018. Now, if you do recognize the name Kolinicki, that's because most recently he was the offensive coordinator at Kansas from 2021 to 2023, where they had a ton of success, especially on the offensive side of the football. You remember in 2022 when Kansas came out of nowhere, had that 5-0 start. Jalen Daniels was in the Heisman contention, getting ready to play TCU because of Kolinicki, right? That's where his name really started to gain some traction, and we saw how good the Jayhawks were on offense. And in his time at Kansas, he led some very impressive offenses. And again, some more stats, but it just backs up how good he is as an OC. In 2022, Kansas averaged 7 yards per play, which was second in the entire nation. They had 41 plays of over 30-plus yards. So something that we've struggled with, explosive play after explosive play, and that's consistent right now with Penn State. They had 6 games that year with over 500-plus yards and 1 game with 600-plus yards. In 2023, their quarterback, Jason Bean, was 4th in the entire country with yards per completion. He had 16 yards per completion, which is, again, very high. That is constantly pushing the football down the field. They also ranked 8th in rushing offense with 211 yards per game, and they were 8th in 10-plus yard plays, which is explosive plays for Danton Lynn, and they were also 8th in 20-plus yard plays. Now, for reference, and why it's important and why it transitioned well with the Nittany Lions, and we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about their offense, but Penn State was 46th in yards per attempt passing in 2022. In 2023, they were 90th in yards per attempt. This year, they are 6th in the entire country. They're pushing the football down the field. They're averaging over 10 yards per completion. They're doing a great job of being aggressive because of Kolinicki. And for the sake of time, this was just a tiny sample size.
Really? Okay.
I could have gone on and on with some of these stats. It's just so impressive. His stats and what he's accomplished as an offensive coordinator is unbelievable. And the best way to describe this offense, and the stats kind of back it up, is he loves creativity and he loves explosive plays.
This is going to be very interesting. I want to go into the offense already, but I know you have a defensive coordinator to talk about as well.
Yeah, and I'm moving over there, defensive coordinator Tom Allen. And again, the theme of this coaching staff is experience. This is his first year at Penn State. He replaces previous defensive coordinator Manny Diaz, who was one of the best in the country. He left to go take the head coaching job at Duke. Allen has a ton of experience. He's been coaching since 1992. So that's before both of us were born, but before everybody
in this room,
was walking this earth. He's been coaching. Now, before coming to Penn State, most notably, Allen was a defensive coordinator at Indiana in 2016 before being elevated after 1 season and taking over as a head coach. He was a Hoosiers head coach from 2017 to 2023, and he was let go a year ago after the team went 3-9. Now, although he had a rough head coaching record at 33-49 overall, he is still a very good defense coordinator, right? And you hear that all the time. Yeah. Some coaches that are great coordinators just struggle sometimes as a head coach, and that's kind of the case here for Allen. He did have some productive seasons at Indiana, though, as a head coach, including being named the American Football Coaches Association Coach of the Year.
Okay.
In 2020, he was a finalist for the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year as well, so did a good job that season, and when he took over, Indiana held its opponents to 129 fewer total yards per game and 95 fewer passing yards per game from the previous year in Allen's first season, which is very impressive. And again, like I said, the biggest turnaround in the country. In 2020, when he won Coach of the Year, Indiana went 6-1 in Big Ten play. Allen is a very experienced coach that knows how to produce a successful defense.
It's fascinating because both coordinators it's the first year at Penn State, but they have the resume to back up everything that they want to do. It's fascinating because it feels like they're off to a good start in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into the numbers here in a second, but it's just they picked up where the previous coordinators have left off, especially on defense, right? Penn State had the best defense in the entire country last year, in my opinion, maybe even the last 2 years under Manny Diaz. Allen has kept that going for this defense. Offensively, they've struggled in some categories. Now, they were still very good a year ago. You don't win 10 games consistently without having a good offense.
Yeah.
But it feels like Kotelnicki has unlocked that big play, explosive plays, pushing the football down the field, being a lot more efficient that Penn State has lacked on, in the last couple of years. And it's a scary football team with a very good coaching staff.
Well, let's dive into it. We talked about the offensive coordinator. What type of offense is he leading? What are the stats right now?
Yeah, we'll start with the stats here to give a little bit of context. So they're scoring offense, they're averaging 34 points per game, which is 33rd in college football. And total offense, they're averaging 461 yards per game, which is 22nd. Passing offense, 244 yards per game, which is right around average. They're 57th in the country. Rushing offense, where they really excel. They have two very, very good running backs. They're averaging 217 yards per game, which is 17th in college football. Yards per play, which I talked about Kotelnicki being one of his things that he specializes in at Kansas. And at Buffalo, they have 7.3 yards per play, which is 13th in all of college football. Explosive plays, something else. These are new stats I normally don't add in, but it tells a little bit more of the story. And 10-plus yard plays are 18th in the entire country. And on third down, they've been phenomenal. Over 50% conversion rate, which is 7th in all of college football.
Wow, so this looks like the matchup of all matchups in the sense that you've identified many times that defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn, he also labels explosive plays at 10 yards. This seems like the ultimate matchup in that sense.
This is, and again, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's tough to go through and I want to give a little background with stats, coaching staff, and key players. But yeah, this is going to be the biggest test by far for D'Anton Lynn since he's been here at USC.
Well, key players, who are they scouting right now?
Yeah, I'm going to start with their quarterback, Drew Aller, 6'5", 238-pound junior, my first Red Dot player of the week. He's been phenomenal this year. He really has taken that next step under Kotelnicki. 73 for 103, 1,101 yards, 9 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. People have given him a hard time over the last couple of years for not pushing the football down the field, taking a lot of checkdowns, right, not finding those explosive plays, but he has done so much more of that this year in Kotelnicki's offense. Penn State, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, is 6th in the entire country in yards per attempt with over 10.5 yards per attempt. Aller has been very good when targeting the deep middle of the field as well. 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And according to Pro Football Focus, he has a 95.2 grade when throwing 10-plus yards over the middle. So loves attack in the middle of the field. We have to be ready for that. Now, he has 26 carries and 89 yards with 3 touchdowns on the ground. Now, I'm not going to label him as a dual threat quarterback or a zone read quarterback, but he can take off and hurt you with his legs if you're not ready for it. So we have to prepare for that. Now, my next Red Dot player is running back Nick Singleton, 6 foot, 227-pound junior, a very good football player, not just a running back, but overall a very good athlete, can do it through the air, can do it on the ground. He has 53 carries, 408 yards, averaging 7.7 yards per carry.
Wow.
He also has 3 touchdowns on the year, and then as a receiver, he has 3 receptions, 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Already has 2,688 total yards and 28 touchdowns in his career. Had over 1,000 yards as a freshman 2 years ago and 12 touchdowns. Now, he did miss the UCLA game with an injury.
Which was last week,
their previous matchup. But Coach Franklin did say that, and I quote, very confident that they will have him back for this week. Franklin went on to say, too, he was surprised that he didn't play a week ago. They thought he was going to be ready. They felt that he was ready. He just wasn't quite 100%, so they wanted to hold him off for one more week. So I expect Singleton to be out there today. Now, or to be out there on Saturday. Now, their other running back, this 1-2 punch, this kid is phenomenal too. I'm serious. When one comes out, it's like the next one's just as good or better. They just keep going back and forth. Their running back is Katron Allen, 5'11", 230-pound junior, another Red Dot player this week, another very good back on this football team. 74 carries, 367 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry, and he has 2 touchdowns on the year. He also has 2 receptions for 21 yards and 1 touchdown. Allen has 2,426 yards total in his career and 21 touchdowns in the last 2.5 years. Again, this is a phenomenal 1-2 punch between Allen and Singleton. They're one of, if not the best running back duo, not only in the Big Ten, but the entire country.
Yeah.
The productivity that they have. They're both juniors. They've been a great duo for the last 3 years. And listen to this, they have over 5,100 total yards combined and 49 touchdowns between the two of them in the last 2 years and 4 games. So this is a very good backfield, including quarterback Drew Aller. Now, the next player I'm going to talk about is quarterback Bo Pribula, 6'2", 207-pound sophomore. You may be asking why I'm talking about another quarterback, but that's because they use him in a Pribula package, a Wildcat package, and it's not just him. They'll use other players as well. We have to be ready when he's in there for some of the zone read. We have to be ready for the triple option. He'll also throw it off of all these fakes too, so be ready for that. He's a decent runner, but he's not, quite a dual threat quarterback. But as a thrower, he's 7 for 10, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He is their 3rd leading rusher. He has 15 carries, only 105 yards, but he's averaging 7 yards per carry, and he has 1 touchdown on the ground. So he is efficient when he does come in there as a runner. Now, my next red dot player is tight end Tyler Warren, 6'6", 257-pound senior. He's the leading receiver on this team, 23 receptions, 290 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A very athletic and also a very physical tight end. He's a great route runner. Warren also has 4 carries for 34 yards rushing and a touchdown. And you may be wondering, why does he have rushing stats? He also has 1-for-1 passing for 17 yards and a touchdown.
Wow.
Remember how I said Kotelnicki's very creative? They have a Warren package. They use him as a Wildcat quarterback. He ran a TD in against Illinois. He also threw a TD against Penn State. They use him in multiple different ways. He can throw the football well. Think a little bit of Travis Kelce with Andy Reid, right? You see some of those zone reads that Travis Kelce does, the quick shovel passes, some of those plays. They will do that with Tyler Warren. Now, he has been used as a quarterback before at the Wildcat in 2021, but Kotelnicki kind of brought that back this year because he didn't do it since then.
Interesting.
Now, Penn State has 3 very talented wide receivers, big play wide receivers, and they easily could have been red dot players, but I was kind of hesitant on who I was going to pick here. So you could have given them to either one of them. I guess I gave them all a light red dot on them just because of how explosive they are. The first one is wide receiver Harrison Wallace, the third, 6'1", 200-pound junior, 14 receptions, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, 16 yards per catch. The next one is wide receiver Omari Evans, 6 foot, 190-pound junior, 10 receptions, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, 22 yards per catch. And then the last one is wide receiver Liam Clifford, 6'1", 205-pound junior, 8 receptions, 180 yards, 1 touchdown, 22.5 yards per catch. He's only played in 3 games this year, but against UCLA a week ago, had 3 catches for 107 yards. All 3 of these guys are averaging over 16 yards per catch, and then Evans and Clifford both have over 22 yards per catch. So big, explosive playmakers on the outside.
Okay, a lot to dive into. Obviously, you just threw a lot of stats at me, but I have a question about Aller. When it comes to him being more aggressive, pushing the ball down the field, has something changed with him physically, or is that just a scheme difference?
I'll say there's 2 things in my opinion. The first one is hiring Kotelnicki, right? And that's something that he's done with his quarterbacks in the past. With Jason Bean, he averaged over 16 yards per completion at Kansas, which is unbelievable. That's just consistently pushing the football down the field. Everywhere he's been, they've been known for explosive plays, not only in the run game, but the pass game as well, right? And he does a good job of being very balanced. So the biggest part for me is a new offensive coordinator that allows him to push the football a little bit more down the field, that emphasizes taking some of those shots. And the second thing for me is confidence. When you start seeing those plays happen, when you start hitting those plays, especially over the middle, right? It's so much more safe as a quarterback to work the sideline.
Yeah.
You know, the defender can't go outside the sideline. So you have the defender on the inside, and if it's a miss, you throw it away outside, right? But when you work the middle of the field, there's so many moving parts. There's so many layers with the linebackers, the safeties, a lot more dangerous. But he's been so efficient, one of the best in the entire country. Like I mentioned, of pushing the football 10-plus yards over the middle of the field. 8 of his 9 touchdowns are over the middle of the field. So the biggest thing for me outside of Kotelnicki is just the confidence. When you start doing it, and then that's something from a year ago that was the biggest knock on him, was completion percentage, not being accurate, and not taking those deep shots, right? Because when you have a great defense, you want to just protect the football and just make the plays you need to, not necessarily the big home run plays, but when you have an offensive coordinator that comes in and puts that confidence into you and shows that you can do it, and you do it in the games over and over, you start to unlock that next level. And I really feel like Drew Aller's done that this year, and that's why this team is so dangerous, right? Their defense is as good as they were a year ago, if not around the same or maybe even better, but their offense is starting to take that next step in those explosive plays category.
So on the whole, though, how would you describe what this offense is?
Yeah, I mean, at the heart, this is a spread offense, right? They have spread tendencies. That's what they love to do. You are going to see some under center formations. They'll get into some pro-style looks, but overall, this is a spread offense. This is a week of very funky formations. We've talked so much about Lynn being funky. It's now...
It's funky versus funky.
Lynn has met his match. I'll say that. Just the exotic looks, the funky formations, the different personnel groupings are nonstop. They use a good amount of pullers and guard tackle pull like we do in the run game. A lot of window dressing, a lot of movement in the run game. So we have to be ready for that with different formations, which makes it tough because you got to read your key, but you're also trying to figure out who's pulling across, who's going which way. He is constantly trying to confuse you on the defensive side of the football, especially your safeties and linebackers. Like I said, using these different formations or different groupings, it's tough to know, is it base? Is it nickel? Is this heavy? What kind of, they'll do a 13 with 1 running back, 3 tight ends, but then they'll throw all these different passes off of it, so which you normally are used to seeing run. So it's just, he does so many things that are out of the ordinary that are tough to prepare for. He literally, in an interview, and this is quoted, was asked, what's your philosophy on offense, or how do you describe your offense? And the way that he responded, he said, the way I approach this is, let's get crazy, in quotes. Like he literally looked at the guy and said, let's get crazy. That's what I like to do. Like, how crazy can I get? And
wow.
That's why I say this week for Lynn, it's going to be so difficult to prepare for, but he is the right man for the job to be ready for this defense. There's so many things you have to be ready for. This is another week, too, of a lot of pre-snap movement, and we'll get into this in a second, but it's not just wide receivers and tight ends. There's some other players they use in pre-snap movement, but we just have to be ready for anything and everything this week, which is tough because you may over-prepare this week because they'll show you different things on film that they may not do on a week-to-week basis, but you don't know if it's going to pop back up in this game. And then they may have a different play off of it. So just a huge week for this USC defense and Danton Lynn to prepare for, and you really have to be ready for everything.
Okay, so pre-snap motion, multiple packages. How do you go about preparing for this? Yeah,
that's a great question. And there's just a fine line between not over-preparing and forcing your players to play slow and overthinking, but also not under-preparing and not being ready for some of these plays or some of these formations with how many different things Cody does on the Penn State offense. But this is going to be another huge week for Lynn of preparing what they need to prepare for. But if they do see something, which they will, in this game that's different, in-game adjustments, half-game adjustments, which he's been phenomenal with. But that is going to be a huge point of emphasis this week is, look, we'll watch all the tape. We'll watch. I guarantee you they're watching Kansas film. I guarantee you they're watching Buffalo film because when you have these big-time matchups like Lincoln Riley does, you start seeing some of these tricks that they maybe used a couple years ago or some plays you've never seen before that you have to prepare for. But at the same time, like I said, you don't want to over-prepare and force your defense to play slow. They still want to play fast, communicate, trust their keys. You just have to have a perfect plan in place. And then if they do things different, be great in-game adjustments.
Is that where in-helmet communication could be clutch again?
I mean, it is. But
or is it that overloading?
It's tough because, when you go into a game like this against, and I think of it from the offensive side, right? I try to flip the roles about it and put myself in their perspective. When you go into a game, you want to trust your keys, trust what you read, and just play. And then you make those adjustments, right? You don't want to sit there and try to guess what they're doing or start trying to figure out pre-snap what they're doing. So I would expect Lynn to obviously give heads up to some of the guys with the, whether it's Keely Arnold back with it or Kamari Ramsey, Masquerade Arnold, whoever they put the green dot on this week, to tell them like, hey, if they're out there quick enough and they line up, this is a 13 personnel look, they still throw it off this, be ready for that. Maybe little pointers. Hey, this guy's going to motion on this play. We've seen that before. Tell guys to be ready for the end around or the reverse. But other than that, you don't want to get too complicated to where you're ready for 5 different plays with one personnel grouping or one formation, although you have to be, but you want to just play fast and trust your keys, right? And that's what I think Danton Lynn does such a good job of, is he talks about the versatility on his defense and how many guys can do different things, but he also plays to their strengths, and he wants to slow it down so they can play fast.
So where does the funky come in? I know you talked about packages and whatnot, but what does that actually look like?
And this is just a small sample size. We don't have a 5-hour episode. I can go through his film back from Kansas, which is some of the stuff he does is crazy, and he's used some of this stuff before.
Did you look at his
I did. I watched a couple
Cody
of his
Kessler.
Kansas
no wonder
highlights.
You're tired today.
Well, I was up till 2 a.m. by the way doing this and watching film.
The man loves his film and this podcast.
I can't help but over prepare, right? I try to prepare like I'm playing in the football game. That's the way that I approach these episodes. But yeah, so the funky, the packages. This is some of the things they do, and this is a small sample size. I've already mentioned some of these, but they use their tight end as Wildcat, right? And they'll do some of that creativity like the Chiefs do with Travis Kelce of the shovel pass play, or they'll bring a wide receiver in motion and let Tyler Warren, their tight end, zone read it and then go triple option. And they do so many different things with that. Then they'll let him throw it. Like I said, he had a touchdown pass against Kent State. And then they bring in their backup quarterback, Bo Prabula, and they'll use a package with him to where he is a natural thrower, right? So he can throw it, but he also does triple option. He does the zone read. They do RPOs. They do so many different things with him. Then another thing they do, which is something I've never seen before, and they did it against UCLA. He also did it at Kansas. They did it against Illinois before, but they used their starting left guard, Vega Ione, in a full-speed fly motion across the field. And I mean full speed. Go watch the play.
I'm sorry. I love when the big men get involved.
If you haven't yet, go watch the UCLA game. There's a play where Ione comes across, and he's split out wide like where Zachariah Branch would be on the left side of the field, detached from the line of scrimmage. Drew Aller calls him in motion, and it is a full-speed fly motion sprint, and he has no job but to take out the defensive end, and he does that and then some.
I want to see this
poor
right now.
defensive, and it was UCLA, so it warmed my heart a little bit. But this poor defensive end for UCLA knew it was coming, but he had to take it on, same foot, same shoulder, be responsible, cut the play back inside. Did a good job, but it was an absolute pancake block. And then he tries to get back up and pancakes him again. 2 pancakes, 1 play, full speed. It was unbelievable. But they have athletic players. That's why they can do that, right? As much as Lynn preaches versatility on our defense, Cody preaches versatility on their offense. How many different things can you do for me? Now, sitting your starting left guard in a fly motion is probably very rare amongst the rest of the country.
Let's get crazy.
The other thing he does, go back to The Illinois game, same thing. This time it's Ione coming from right to left. Same exact thing. Fly motion. Now Bo Pribula's in there. They fake it. And then he bluffs the defensive end like he's going to pancake him, slips up to the corner, and then they have an explosive play because Pribula pulls it and gets on the edge. So, and those are just 2 examples. And then I'm assuming they're probably going to do it again this week. And now don't be surprised if there's a pass off of it. Don't be surprised if there's a reverse off of it. So it's just unbelievable. And like I mentioned, another thing, loves to use heavy packages. He will use those 13 personnel. And what 13 personnel is 1 running back, 3 tight ends, 1 receiver. And you may think they're going to run the football off of that. They're going to be heavy package, downhill running. He has multiple passing concepts off of that with all the tight ends they use. So, and Tyler Warren's the main one, but they have other good pass catching tight ends. They're just, and that's a small sample size. We could probably go on for hours about this, but he is just, and going back to Buffalo, and that's why you don't just show up and run base plays to have a running back go for 400 yards and 8 touchdowns. You add in creativity. You add so many different things in to find explosive plays that maybe aren't there on a average down-to-down basis to where it's just, hey, straight up 36 power, straight up sweep to the left. You add in those different window dressing, confuse the linebackers, confuse the safeties, and then you find explosive plays that way.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you. It's like chicken or the egg. Is their offense so successful because they have a successful run game and then you can work off of that? Or is their run game aided by the fact that they're so funky?
I think the run game I'll say this, the run game is their best facet of their offense, right? And it's because of the players they have there, right? With Allen and Singleton, they really are the best 2, and I truly believe the best combo running backs in the entire country. I mean, 5,100 total yards between the 2 of them and 49 touchdowns over 2.5 years. 2 years and 5 games. That's what they've combined for. When you have to game plan for 2 players like that in the backfield, and then you have a backup quarterback that can run, it opens everything else up for you, right? That opens up the play action passing. That opens teams playing a little bit more aggressive to the line of scrimmage, and that's why Eure can play action and then hit the middle of the field because you have a Mike linebacker coming up being responsible for a run. You have, a Sam or a Will playing tight to the line of scrimmage that have to respect those play action plays, and then you can hit the post behind them. So they do a great job of that. But the other thing on top of it is, although the run game is so important for this offense, he loves to be balanced. He's not going to sit there and just run it over and over and over and over and over again and just, take possession after possession and run time off the clock. Now, when you play more explosive offenses, he can do that, but he loves getting the pass game involved. I'll show you those explosive plays. I mean, you have 2 receivers over 22 yards per catch. Yeah. That is big-time shot home run plays, and they do it over and over again, but they'll sometimes lull you to sleep a little bit in the run game, hit a play action, have a deep post to one of their playmakers on the outside. So it's just, you never know what's coming next. That's the biggest part with Kotelnicki is the creativity, the big plays, and you're just constantly guessing what they're going to do. Now, I'm not saying the entire game is going to be big man motion and wildcat and crazy. There's going to be a good amount of it, but they do have a lot of base plays, base formations. They'll get up there and run, your West Coast levels type plays with crossers and a corner out with a flat underneath. They'll do multiple West Coast spread offense passing concepts. They'll do a lot of run game stuff like we do, just straight downhill man blocking, or they'll do some pullers and use a lot of that. But when he starts getting in his bag of tricks, that's when it gets crazy. And the last thing I'll say too about the creativity is, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because, depending on who you ask, did we get the stop last week on 4th down? Did we not? But they do have, on 3rd and 4th and short, the brotherly shove or the tush push or the bush push. They will run that too. So we have to be ready for that. And again, there's no recipe for stopping that. It's just best on best, and you got to be physical. But on 3rd and 4th and short situations, be ready for the tush push.
Now, bear with me I'm trying to formulate this question for you. The advantage of Lynn's defense is that they will show you looks that you have to prepare for, or at least make sure you know where the pressure's coming and then, backs out or whatever. We've talked about it. Who dictates what?
No, that's a great question.
Like who blinks first?
Yeah, who flinches?
Exactly. No. Who dictates who does what on either side in the battle of the funky?
Is this a pride thing to where?
True. Yeah.
Lynn's gonna. This is what we're running no matter what. You guys adjust us, or is Kotelnicki gonna say no? We're gonna put a left guard out there. We're gonna go wildcat for a whole drive. You adjust to us. I am so excited for Penn State's offense versus our defense. I mean, and that's what you say. I know it's funny. We joke about it, the battle of the funky, but I mean It is 2 coordinators that are the best in their craft, that are both evil geniuses when it comes to drawing up defensive schemes, drawing up offensive schemes. It is going to be so much fun to watch. And again, another layer of that, Dan Lynn went to Penn State.
Great point.
You mentioned that before we started, is that's probably going to be a little bit more personal for him as well. There's going to be a little bit.
A bowl, a Kessler bowl.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we got the Lynn bowl as well. But yeah, it's going to be so much fun. I will say this, though. They are phenomenal on 3rd down. A lot of movement. Third and medium, though, find Tyler Warren. Find their tight end, Tyler Warren. They love doing bunch formations. They love running a quick out to him on third down. That's where they're so successful right now. They have a 52% conversion rate on third down, right? So they're very good. They do a great job of staying on the field. And you always hear a defense say, get off the field, get the stop. Penn State does a great job of extending those drives. Be ready for movement, be ready for motion. Again, like I just mentioned, Tyler Warren, third and medium. And what I mean by that is third and 2 to 5. They want to find him in the flat. They want to find him selling the out route, cutting across the middle. Same thing down by the goal line in the red zone, the 10 yards and in that area. Find Tyler Warren. But this is just a great offensive mind paired up with a lot of great playmakers on that side of the football and a quarterback that's really finding his stride. So it's a huge challenge. But like I said, I cannot wait to watch Lynn versus Coliseum. Yeah. I mean, that alone would probably sell pay-per-view tickets if the whole game was that. So I'm so excited for this matchup.
In your mind, who are the key defensive players for this matchup?
First one, Easton Mascarenas-Arnold. They love to confuse your middle linebacker. They love to use different fronts to where you're confused of strength is right, strength is left. What personnel is this? Is this heavy? Are we considering this as base, as nickel? Yep. He has to get everybody going. Now, I know he doesn't have the green dot on his helmet, but it's his responsibility with the front seven to make sure they know strength of formation, they know the personnel grouping, and they know different motions and different adjustments, and he needs to be very vocal, obnoxious communication or over communication. Yeah. Like Denton Lynn talks about, he has to do that the entire game. And then the other area for me is I guess I'll put 3. The other area is Gavin Meyer, Kobe Pepe, and Nate Clifton. The interior of this defensive line cannot get moved around off their spot. We have to be able to stop the run and force. And again, they're doing good throwing the football, but we can't allow them to be two-dimensional the entire game. And that starts with stopping the run up front, controlling the trenches. They're averaging over 215 yards per game on the ground. And like we just said a minute ago, I really feel like everything they do in their offense, the success that they have starts with the ground game. It all just builds off of that. So we have to be able to stop the run with 2 very good running backs. And a lot easier said than done. And then the last part is safeties. You cannot get confused with all the rocking and rolling they're going to do, or with all the motion when we rock and roll safeties. Yeah. If we're passing it off, if we're in and outing, Kamari Ramsey and Keely Arnold or Zion Branch or Bryson Shaw, whoever's in there, has to make sure that the DBs are all on the same page and know when we're passing things off with the bunch formation, when we're rocking and rolling with the cross formation, or we're running across and man-to-man. So we have to be on the same page, because if you don't and you get confused about these different things, explosive plays. And that's what they love to do. So, yeah, it's a huge matchup. It sounds like I'm talking a lot, but that's because I am. And there's just so many different layers of this offense that you have to prepare for from top to bottom. Now,
it sounded like on Trojans Live that Coach Riley wasn't pleased with the run defense against Minnesota. What's the prescription for that when you're facing what you describe as the best 1-2 punch in college football?
Yeah, I'll say this. I think, and we talked off camera about, where do you attack them? What's their weak point? And I really feel like they don't on either side of the football. But if you had me pick one, I think what helps us this week, outside of, how good their running backs are, is our offensive line is inexperienced. That's somewhere that we can take advantage of. Now, they're physical. They're good. They're really starting to build consistency together. But outside of their right guard, Sal Wormley, they are 4 new faces on that front. They have a new center. They have new tackles. They replaced 2 very good tackles from a year ago. They replaced their left guard, the Ione. I know he's coming in and doing some motion stuff, so he's playing well. And they're good players up front. Don't get me wrong, but they replaced 4 of their 5 starters from a year ago. So it's inexperience. That's where we can take advantage of. But again, Kotelnicki helps that. He protects that. He uses those motions. He forces you to play a little bit slower. You can't come downhill as fast. You have to hesitate. You're trying to read keys when there's so much movement and so many different fronts and formations that's where he helps his offensive line have an advantage. But for me this week, we have to be physical up front. That's why I singled out Nate Clifton and Kobe Pepe and Gavin Meyer. This is a huge week for them in the interior of this offensive line to be able, or the interior of this defensive line, to go after their offense and clog up the middle of the field and force them to work sideline to sideline, and then we have to come up and tackle in space.
I hate when you make me excited, like too excited, because I'm like, it's only Wednesday.
I know. Saturday cannot come quick enough
right?
this week.
Exactly. Any other thoughts on this Penn State offense, Cody?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. I could go on and on if we had a longer episode, but we'd probably be here for a very long time. But no, I mean, this is just, like I said, the biggest challenge so far for Denton Lynn, and only his 6th game here at USC, going up against Kotelnicki in this Penn State offense.
Alrighty, well, before we get into Penn State's defense, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And Trojan fans, celebrate every USC win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any Los Angeles area Ralph's store. Alrighty, Cody, that was a lengthy offensive preview, and I'm glad, because I really didn't know much about it, but I know some of this Penn State defense. But take it away. I know you love to start with stats.
Yeah, as good as their offense is, or as good as they've been this year, their defense is even better. This is, in my opinion, probably the best defense we're going to face this year, one of the best in the country. But starting with their stats, and he's back it up exactly. Their scoring defense, they're only giving up 11 points per game, which is 8th in all of college football. Total defense, they're only giving up 233 yards per game, which is 4th in college football. Passing defense, 157 yards per game, 11th in the country. Rushing defense is phenomenal. They do not give up an inch on the ground, only giving up 76 yards per game, which is 4th in college football. And to back that up a little bit more, they're only giving up 2.4 yards per rush, which is also 4th in college football. And third down, right around the middle. This is somewhere that we can take advantage of. They're only giving their opponents a 33% conversion rate, which is also 33rd in college football.
Alrighty, well, looking at their key players, who are you putting your red dot on?
Yeah, my first red dot player of the week is safety Jalen Reed, 6 foot, 210-pound senior. He's a leading tackler with 33 tackles this year. He also has 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 1.5 sacks, as well as 2 pass defense. He is their do-it-all player on the defensive side of the football. He'll line up everywhere on the field. He'll even line up at middle linebacker in some of their dime packages, so we have to be ready for that. The next player that's very good is linebacker Tony Rojas, 6'2", 239-pound sophomore, 23 tackles and an interception. Now, one of their stars on defense, safety Kevin Winston Jr., a very good football player, potential first-round pick when he is healthy. He has been out with a, quote, long-term injury, is what Franklin described it as, since the Bowling Green game. Now, you may think, why am I bringing him up if he's out with injury? But last week, Minnesota's corner, Justin Wally, who one of their best players on defense, we thought was out, and we talked about him being out with a non-disclosed injury or a leg injury from non-contact. He ended up playing, right? So I'm doing my due diligence this time.
Now you got to
say They said long-term injury. They didn't say exactly what it is. I couldn't find the timetable. That's just what they described it. So if Winston Jr. is in there, be ready for him. He's a very good player, but the guy that stepped up in his absence is safety Zaki Wheatley, 6'2", 200-pound junior. He has 23 tackles, 1 interception, 2 pass defense, a very physical safety who does a good job of flying around and tackling in space. The coaching staff has been very high on him the last couple of weeks with Wheatley or with Winston out. He's been doing a great job of kind of filling that role and taking that next step as a playmaker on this defense. Now, my next red dot player is middle linebacker Kobe King, 6'1", 250-pound junior, a leader on this defense, has over 125 tackles in his career. So far this year, he has 23 tackles and 1 sack. He gets everybody going. Think Easton Mascarenas-Arnold for us. He's all over the field. He'll be in there in some of the dime packages. He'll be in there in base downs. He'll be in there in nickel. He's pretty much always on the field, and he does a good job of flying to the football. Now, they're 2 corners, very good players. The first one is cornerback A.J. Harris, 6'1", 191-pound sophomore. He is a transfer from Georgia. This is his first year at Penn State. Good player, especially as a young sophomore. You can see him take that next step. He's going to be good in the future as well. 16 tackles, 1 interception, 2 pass defense. Their other corner opposite of him is Jalen Kimber, a 6', 190-pound senior. Another transfer from Florida, was at Georgia for 2 years before that. Veteran player with a lot of experience, 9 tackles, 1 pass defense. Now, their nickel linebacker or nickel corner, or a guy that you'll see outside as well, all over the field.
Okay.
He plays all over, especially when they do those dime packages. They'll put him outside and bring Harris inside, or they'll bring Kimber inside. They move their DBs around a lot to try to confuse you. His name is Cam Miller, 6', 180-pound junior, 12 tackles, 1 sack, and like I said, move him all over the field. Another corner that comes in and plays a lot. Elliott Washington, 5'11", 195-pound sophomore. They will bring him in again in those dime packages, and then move Harris around, and then move, so they move so many guys around. You just have to memorize the number, memorize their backup, know where they're at all times and what personnel grouping they have. He has 4 tackles, 1 interception, 2 pass defense. Now let's get to the defensive line, and this is a very good group. This is the first time I've had 3 red dot players in a 4-man defensive line. You probably could have gone 4, and I probably should have, but the first one is defensive tackle Zane Durant, 6'1", 290-pound junior, red dot player of the week. Very physical on the inside of this defense, has a very good first step at his size, 290 pounds. Think Antoine Woods, just a little bit quicker.
Goodness.
I don't want to say more physical because Antoine Woods was a dog in there. And that's my guy. So Twalk was amazing, but just a little bit quicker in that sense. Number 28, too, as a defensive tackle.
Love that.
Which it's the biggest 28 I've ever seen, but you're going to see some weird numbers on this defense. Like I said, they move guys around. But yeah, he's 21, or number 28 as a nose tackle. He has 12 tackles, 2.5 sacks. That's why I said his first step is so good. He does a good job of getting to the quarterback and being physical and quick up front. And he has 1 pass defense. The next red dot player is defensive end Danny Dennis Sutton, 6'5", 272-pound junior, 8 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 3 pass defense. He leads the team in pass defense as a defensive end, which means he does a great job of, if he's not getting home to the quarterback, get his hands up, tip some footballs. They get interceptions off of that, so Miller has to be ready for that. The next guy, and this is probably their best player on their entire defense. He is a phenomenal football player. Is their edge rusher, Abdul Carter, 6'3", 260-pound junior. I put red dot with a ton of exclamation points.
I'm trying to count it. I've never seen you put this many
it's
exclamation
just
points.
Overemphasized because of the struggles we've had on the outside in pass protection.
Yeah.
He has to be the main red dot. He is someone this week that and this is the perfect example of when I talk about game plan players, red dot players, Aaron Donald type players, J.J. Watt. This is the perfect example. I guarantee you Lincoln Riley's in the film room with the red laser pointer saying, we have to know where Carter's at all times. I want a chip every time on him. I want a tight end on him. If your running back doesn't have pass block responsibility, help out. We just have to do that. He has 22 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass defense. Best player on their defense, will absolutely be a first-round pick next year if healthy. I personally believe that he's playing himself into a top 10 pick right now by the way that he's playing. He's phenomenal. One of the best first steps that I've ever seen from a defensive end at the college level. And what I mean by that is how quick he gets off the football. And we've struggled. Now, luckily, we're at home, but we struggled at tackle with Murphy and Page of getting off the football, right? Yeah. And we've talked about, and Lincoln Riley said in the press conference against Michigan, that was a silent cadence. That was on him a little bit. We can help them out. Luckily, we're at home.
He said that on Tuesday, this week.
So I hope we don't have a disadvantage getting off the football, but cheat a little bit. You see in the NFL where guys cheat at tackle a little bit, getting back, and they get called. If you get called, fine, but try to push the limits as far as you can without getting a penalty. But like I said, we have to chip on him. We have to be ready for that. He's quick off the line of scrimmage. He's physical. He is 6'3", 260 pounds, and he runs a 4.40. That's why I say he has one of the fastest first steps that I've ever seen at the college level. A very good player. We have to know where he's at all times. And then another player, their defensive tackle, potentially a red dot player. I'm going to give it to him anyway just because of how good he is. His name's Devon J. Thomas, 6'1", 304-pound senior. He's their veteran player in that group at defensive tackle. Very smart football player, 9 tackles on the year, and he does a great job of congesting and clogging up the middle of this defense.
Hello.
Yeah.
That's my first thought. My second thought, not related, is I love how much respect they give their big men on this team. 28 for defensive tackle, and then their left guard gets some love on offense. I love it. I love it. Anyway, now a constant theme in what you just said was confusing looks. What is their scheme and how do they use those confusing looks?
Yeah, this is a 4-2-5 defense. This is, in my opinion, the best defense that we have faced all year and probably are going to face this season. They love to be aggressive and they'll show you some exotic looks, especially on third down. Be ready for that. Now, it's not quite as crazy as Lynn, and you're not going to see as many overload and different looks like that. They will go a lot of 5 down, where they walk up 5 guys to the line of scrimmage to try to create those one-on-one blocks on third down. So be ready for that. They love to try to confuse you with their looks, but most of the time it's from their secondary. And what I mean by that is they do a phenomenal job of using different personnel groupings back there, right? I mentioned how they're going to get to dime packages a lot. They're going to bring 6 DBs on the field. They're going to move their safety to middle linebacker. They're going to move their corner back inside to Sam. They're going to bring in their backup corner outside, bring in another safety and push him in the back into the field. They do so many different things that you have to be able to identify and know who's who. And then as soon as the ball snaps, the picture is going to change. And what I mean by confusing you in that is it may look like cover 3 to start, and it's going to end up being cover 6 or cover 2, or it may look like 2 high, and then at the snap of the football, they're going to rotate down, and then it's going to be 1 high. So they do a great job of changing the picture post snap. So Miller has to be on his P's and Q's this week. He has to watch a ton of film. He has to understand it. And the biggest thing as a quarterback, when you have a team that changes their look from pre-snap to post-snap in the back end, is confirming the picture. That's what they always tell you is, okay, it looks like 2 high. I'm going with 2 high. That's my read. When the ball's snapped, hang on that safety for a second, confirm it's 2 high. Make sure he's not rotating down. Now it's 1 high because then you go the wrong place with the ball, right? Coverage dictates where you go with the football. If it's 2 high, I work my middle of the field. I work the outside. If it's 1 high, I can work the seams, all those different things. So he has to be ready and know what the look is post-snap and not get too determined pre-snap of where he's going with the football and go through progression. But the other side is that we have to protect and give him time to do so.
Well, that's my next question. How do you do that? Especially with a defense that, per the stats you read, is very good at run defense. So you don't even have that kind of safety blanket of getting the run going.
You would hope that maybe we can run the football a little bit, and then use some play action and all of that and slow them down a little bit. Because when you constantly throw it as a defensive line, you just pin your ears back and get after the quarterback.
Yeah, of course.
How do you mix that up? Like you just said, run the football. But they're 4th in run defense, and they're only giving up 2 yards per carry on the ground. So it's tough. That's why I said, and we talked yesterday when we were talking a little bit about it, or before we started the show, when we go through some of the preview a little bit. I don't know where the holes are in this defense. It's tough. They are so good, and they're so fundamentally sound. And a big part of that, and something in the college football world, now I know they have some transfers on the outside, but the majority of their core on this defense are players that have been in this system. And I know it's Allen's first year, but some of the players talked about how it's pretty consistent with what Manny Diaz did a year ago.
Gotcha.
Right? So they keep some of the same foundation. He may do different things schematically, and he may change some of the looks or bring in different packages, but overall, it is kind of a similar foundation, right? So for me, the biggest thing is, I know it's tough. We have to run the football. We have to find a way to get Woody Marks going. We have to find a way to get Woody Marks on the edge. And I would love to say, hey, let's work outside, but you have Carter working the edge who's a 4-4. You have their linebackers that can move sideline to sideline so well. It's tough to expose them anywhere on this field, right? It's so difficult, and they have great safeties that fly up and hit and come down. Like I said, their leading tackler is one of their safeties. They're so good in space. They're surefire tacklers. Hardly ever are you going to find them with a misassignment, or not communicating. They do a great job of making sure everybody's on the same page. So, yeah, it's tough. And I'm not trying to scare everyone. I'm not trying to freak everyone out, but I'm doing my due diligence. This is how I would prepare for a football game, is those offensive meetings have to be laser focused. We are locked in our pass protection meetings. We are locked in our run game meetings. We're locked in on the receivers, on knowing who we're blocking in the run game, and we've got to be ready to go out there and win one-on-ones when they do bring pressure and play man-to-man, because they will. They will bring some pressure and trust and force you to say, hey, we're going to play man-to-man, try to win on the outside. That's where I think we can actually take an advantage. And another thing that we can do this week, and I think is going to be huge, is mix up our cadence. We cannot consistently go on one or on the first clap. And I think we do clap signals still in the Coliseum, if I remember correctly, against Wisconsin or Utah State. I wouldn't mind some verbal this week, and maybe Lincoln Riley does that just to try to overemphasize this, hot, 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 get them to jump off sides. But we have to keep them guessing when it comes to when they're blitzing, when they're getting a pass rush going. We can't just consistently have the same cadence over and over so they can guess and time those snaps. I talked about how good their first step is. We need to use those ghost plays. How good have we become at those free plays of faking the cadence? I don't want to see one play this week on one. I'm fine with first sound, where you get up there and quick snap it real quick so they can't get set. But other than that, it needs to be on 2, on 3. Ghost type plays. It needs to be those hard counts where we get a free play. We have to find every little advantage that we can to slow this defensive front down. And in my opinion, the best way to do that is using cadence and using hard count this week.
I know you've been a proponent of quick game as well. Is that something you'd like to see on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, that's to help Miller, yes, but they do a good job of being aggressive and dropping out into those little areas.
Then never mind.
No, but I mean, yes, we have to. We have to be able to win in quick game. And I told you, when they play man-to-man, I've said this from 3 years we've been doing this podcast, to play at the NFL, to play at the next level, you have to be able to win on a slant or a fade or a quick in route or a quick out route in man-to-man. If you can't win man-to-man, you can't play at the college level, you can't play in NFL. So if they do bring a lot of those pressures and we know we're getting lit up with some blitzes, go quick game. Change the route to a slant outside instead of a double move, or instead of, pushing the ball down the field. I'm fine with that. But the problem is they do a good job of passing things in and out. And they're just so good at communicating, at never being out of place. I talked about how many different things they do on the back end. You expect them to give up holes in this defense, give up big-time plays. They do not do that. And it's so impressive when you watch the film going back to the Illinois game. There's a play, and it was a gotta-have-it situation. I think it's 3rd or 4th down, and they have double slant on the right side. Illinois is on offense. They're playing, and I hate to admit it, but I watch film when as a quarterback, I try to diagnose the play before it happens. They're playing man. There's nothing on the field that doesn't tell me it's man-to-man. You expect it to be man-to-man. They're lined up man-to-man. Everything head up, the way they're looking, everything's man-to-man. Then it's a ball snap. You confirm. I still think it's man-to-man. As a slot player runs a slant, their nickel defender starts to go for one step and then drops in zone. And he throws a pick. And you may think, watching film, the Illinois quarterback just threw a walk-in pick to the guy. And they took it back for pick 6, got called back because of blocking the back, so they didn't get it. But it was man, and it would have got me. And I'm watching from the eye in the sky. I can see everything. He's on the field with linemen in front of him. It is just so good to where you hardly find them out of place. Their communication is phenomenal. Allen's biggest thing that he runs his defense on are takeaways, tackling, and effort. And his biggest one is effort, right? Because it doesn't take skill or athleticism to have great effort, and that kind of goes hand in hand. You can tell how good this defense is coached, and like I mentioned, it's tough to find the holes in this defense because of the playmakers they have and how physical they are, but also they're always on the same page, and there's not a lot of missed assignments.
How are they so assignment sound if this is his first year as DC? Is it that similarity with their previous scheme?
Well, and I went back and read some articles when he first got there and kind of read about his philosophy and what the players were saying, and some of their leaders said they've never been around a coach, and Manny Diaz was so good, and they had high praise for him, but they've never been around a coach that would slow it down and kind of like Lynn here, would break it down to a point to make sure that everyone from the starters to the 5th string guys, the walk-ons, were on the same page, and then he would move on. He wanted to make sure that you can play fast. And I think that's so important, either offense or defense, as a coordinator, to make sure everyone's on the same page so there's no confusion so you can play fast. And instead of having 20 plays, have 10 plays but play quicker. I think that's more important than overloading a playbook or trying to do too many things. Same thing with offense. You think that they're going to do so many different things because all the looks and creativity they have under Koldenicki, which they do, but it's still very condensed on game day. He still allows them to play fast. So they do a good job. And you got to give Franklin credit, too, their head coach. of hiring the right guys, of losing 2 coordinators and still being able to pick up where they left off and have success, and they've done that. But yeah, defensively, it's just it's tough, and I watched the film and I'm trying to figure out what they're in or what they're doing, and there's multiple times where they got me, and I'm watching from the side, and I'm watching. I've already know who wins this game and know some of the plays, and it's just they do such a great job, and like I said, do a great job in communication, passing things off, and confusing you and being in the right spot at all times.
So if you're Coach Riley, if you're Miller Moss, how are you attacking it this week?
I think the biggest thing that we need to do, like I mentioned, is go with cadence. That can help us, right? That can give us an advantage. We have to be able to run the football. I do think our advantage is going to be on the edges still. I think Woody Marks is very good in space. We saw that a week ago. I think allowing us to get up to the second level, we have to be good in double teams, but I think we need to go back to Quentin Joyner. I know he had the fumble, but he was averaging 11 yards per carry. Very good player. So we absolutely need to get Woody Marks going. We need to get Quentin Joyner going. But the biggest thing for us, and I don't say I don't care. It doesn't matter what we do on offense, what the game plan is, because I trust Lincoln Riley and the staff will have a great plan in place and a great in-game adjustments if needed. But the biggest thing we have to do, no matter what the game plan is, protect the football. We cannot turn the ball over, especially when we are rolling on offense. That has happened way too many times the last couple of weeks. Take some shots. I'm fine with that. Go 7-man protection. Force them to bring 7 players, right? And play man-to-man on the outside. And like I said, on third down especially, they love getting those one-on-one matchups. I'm fine with that this week. We just have to win on the outside. And I expect a lot of that because Allen obviously is watching the film from last week. He's watching the film from a couple weeks ago to where he's going to try to find a way to get Carter and to get some of these defensive players on an island so they can have those one-on-one pass rushers, even if we have to go, or leave a tight end in or leave a running back in. He's still going to try to find a way to bring an extra player to create those one-on-ones. But overall, we just have to be so fundamentally sound this week when our communication and pre-snap looks of Miller knowing what the protection is and also knowing what the coverage is going to be, confirm it after the ball snapped. And again, it doesn't matter what – we need to be balanced. Don't get me wrong, right? The recipe to winning football in the Big Ten is being able to run the ball and take those shots when needed, right? Push the football down the field, protect, and be able to take advantage. Now, USC is a little different than other Big Ten opponents. I'd love to see us get back to being explosive on offense. We have to protect to do that. But overall, we have to protect the football no matter what the game plan is and not allow Penn State to have extra possessions.
Alrighty, Cody, any other thoughts on this Penn State defense, which I know we could probably talk an hour about this defense.
Yeah, again, I've got so many more, but just the last couple things I want to talk about is just be ready. We talked about pressure, but be ready for a ton of corner pressure and a ton of safety pressure. He will do it all game long. It's not just going to be a single linebacker. He doesn't bring a ton of, and we just talked about it a little bit, but it's not his MO is not to bring all-out blitzes or line up 8 or 9 in the box and just constantly bring pressure. He will bring single pressure throughout the game, loves dropping his defensive ends out. He'll use Carter in covering and pass as well, and he moves well sideline to sideline. He'll use some of his other defensive ends, dropping out and bringing in middle linebacker, bringing in safety. So be ready for that. Running backs, that's what I'm talking to. Be ready for those corner pressures to protect Miller. We have to be ready when they don't bring pressure is for the stunts and the twist, right? I talked about that against Wisconsin. They were getting home with the 4-man rush because they were going defensive end, defensive tackle twist. We struggled with it. We have to communicate, be ready to pass that off. And again, just overall, we have to, everything we've done up to this point, we've got to take it a step further. This is a week that, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I want to see a frustrated football team. I want to see an angry football team. I want to see an angry offensive line. I want to see an offense that can go out there and prove that they can play with one of the best defenses in the country. What better challenge ahead to get that bad taste out of your mouth to go against one of the best defenses in college football, and especially in your conference, at home, at the Coliseum. Yeah. It's a primetime game. Argumentative, I guess, 12:30, maybe prime time, but for the rest of the country.
For that network.
But overall, this is a great opportunity, and I can't wait to see what Lincoln Riley and his staff come up with against this defense and how the offense goes out there and performs. And I'm looking at every week as a new challenge, right? And we're going to go out there and pass a test and be 1-0 this week on offense.
Well, on that note, Cody, let's look at the game as a whole. It's time for the USC Man School Pharmacy prescription to win the keys to the game for USC against Penn State. First up, eliminate turnovers.
Yeah, priority number 1 this week on offense is taking care of the football. We have 8 turnovers in the last 3 games. 6 of those turnovers were in our opponent's territory when we were putting together promising drives. We cannot afford to give Penn State any extra possessions this week, and we need to protect the football all game long.
Second key to the game, stop the run.
Yeah, Penn State has one of, if not the best running back duo in all of college football with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. They have combined for over 5,100 total yards and 49 touchdowns in their career. Offense coordinator Andy Kotelnicki loves to have a balanced attack on offense, but the Nittany Lions have been very successful in the run game this year, averaging 217 yards per game on the ground, which is 17th in college football. We have to be physical and control the line of scrimmage on defense.
And the final key to the game, start fast on offense and find a rhythm.
Yeah, we need to make it a huge point of emphasis this week to start fast on offense. We have to score early and often. We cannot let our foot off the gas at any point in this game. Penn State's offense is averaging over 34 points per game, and their defense has only given up 11 points per game. Every possession is going to be so important, and we cannot settle for field goals this week. When we get into the red zone, we need to be aggressive and finish in the end zone.
Alrighty, Cody, a consequence of us not being in our own space is that we cannot control our own time. So we only have this space for just a limited amount of time, which means this is probably going to be the shortest preview episode we've ever done. We don't have time for questions. I am so sorry. I feel so bad about it, but we just had to wrap it up to make sure we have a complete episode itself. So apologies. This is just a one-time thing for sure.
I mean, credit to you guys. It's a miracle that we even got this episode done in the first place. The hurdles we had to go over this week. But yeah, you guys did a good job. I thought the set looks well. Leave in the comments how you guys think it looks. Obviously, next week, hopefully we'll be back down in Heritage down there in the dungeon, in the basement underneath the weight room. But yeah, love you guys. Fight on. This is a great week for USC football. What a great opportunity. I'm so excited for the Trojans. If you're going to the game, if you're going to be at the Coliseum, make sure it is loud. Make sure it is rocking from start to finish. Get there early. Come watch the Trojan Tailgate Show.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going live at 10:30, so you can come watch that. But overall, I'm excited for a great opportunity for this USC football team. Let's go out there and dominate on Saturday.
Alrighty, Cody. Thank you so much for all the film work you do. You've made me even more excited for this game, so I appreciate it. But that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.